In James chapter 4, James talks about how God's people were asking for things, or rather, they desired things that they wanted, but they did not receive these things. He says in words, he says that you ask, but you do not receive because you don't ask of God. And then in that same excerpt, he also talks about how you ask, but you do not receive because your desires are selfish. And then he goes on to say, you adulterers, don't you not know that being a friend of the world is being an enemy with God? As I sat out here and I meditated for the first time in a very long time, I meditated on the oneness that I have with everything around me, with reality, with the consciousness or the limitlessness of God. And I meditated on this. And as I meditated, I observed my thoughts come and go. Different thoughts that I had that told me you're not limitless. You're not limitless. Because what about this? And what about that? And I observed these thoughts and I was able to essentially dwell in the I am that is God, the divine essence of who I am, the limitless essence of who I am. And I was clothed in this spirit or in this consciousness that is truly who we are. And I also, before this, was also thinking about how abundance, freedom, life, peace is actually the default. And constraint, lack, poverty, all the negative emotions that we feel are simply just perpetuated by us, collective consciousness. And but this consciousness that is collective is not the I am, but it comes from the ego, from the flesh, and it's the system of this world. But we perpetuate it by our belief in these things and by our rationalization of these things, where we tell ourselves that I am not limitless because of this thing. I'm not a consistently profitable trader because of that thing. And then we place limits on ourselves through fear. And then we try and battle those limits and those problems that don't even actually exist. But by us battling with these shadow monsters, we make them real, when in true essence, they're not real. And it's us that make them real by our own energy, our focus, our attention. And so by our averting our focus and by averting our gaze from the limits and the constraints that we place ourselves, that creates the system of this world, to the limitless, that is God, divine, Christ consciousness, we come to the realization that want wanting is evil because it's in complete contradiction to the I am that already has ownership over all these things. And so you may have the desire for these things, but you must ask of God. And that means to bring it to the part of you, the essence of you that is God, that is the I am. And it doesn't necessarily mean asking it as if I want this, but it means dwelling in the I am. And by dwelling with the I am, you come into personalization with the I am. You identify now with God that is in you, the limitlessness that is everything. And then in that dwelling, you then come to the knowing, not the realization or the rationalization, but the knowing that everything that you desire is already yours. But it's not through the road of rationalization, through the road of thinking, but rather it's through the road of knowing in the heart, in the soul. And the beautiful thing is, it already dwells in you. You don't have to go out of yourself to find this, but rather you must go inward because it's there in you already. God already dwells in you. The dwelling place of God is in man. But you must let your thoughts pass instead of personalizing with your thoughts. Let them go like cars passing on the street as you observe the road. Let them come and go. And you can do this by the practice of meditation. Meditating on what? Meditating on your limitlessness. First, before you even meditate, tell yourself that God is limitless. There is no limit to God. God is everything. And then tell yourself, understand that limit is evil. Constraints are evil. They are not good. They're not of God. You place constraints on yourself from fear, not out of fear, but from fear. Fear that is not who you are, doubt that is not who you are, but is perpetuated by this collective consciousness created by egos, by the ego, the devil, which is the flesh. And we all have this aspect of ourselves. And if we all come into agreement of that is who I am, and that this rationalization, that this limitation that I place on myself and that I see others place on themselves is real, then we perpetuate that lie until it becomes the truth for everyone. And then you create a system of limitless, or sorry, a system of limit. And then this system is perpetuated because people are born into the system. But if you look at a child when they're not born with limit. They want to touch this, they want to explore that, they want to self actuate, they want to expand their consciousness and learn and become one. And they just naturally know that they're one with things around them. And they're curious about this, curious about that. But we perpetuate the self imposed constraints that we adopted from those that we saw around us by the system that was here when we showed up. But we don't have to continue to perpetuate this system. We don't have to continue to agree with constraint, agree with limit. Hell is constraint, a blockage from God, a blockage from I am. To not identify with God, with the I am, to not know God, to not know the I am, but instead identify with the ego, identify with the flesh is hell because you want. And so now you're an enemy of God because God does not want. God is and God has and God bees, but he does not want. Wanting is evil because by wanting, you perpetuate the lie that you don't already have. And wanting is through rationalization because you've come to some realization, even though it's not real, it's actually an illusion, that you do not currently possess these things. But in truth, the I am already possesses it, and the I am is you. And you can identify with this I am. But if you feel like it's not you, it's because you don't identify with the I am. You identify with the aspect of yourself that is the flesh, that is the ego, that is evil, that perpetuates the devil system, the 666 system that you want, you want, you want. But by separating yourself from this daily, and getting your daily bread from the I am in you, you can ask of God. And when you ask of God, you're not truly asking of God, but you understand and you dwell in God. And by in that dwelling, in that knowing, you know that all that you already desire, you already have. And then from that, naturally, you come to become gracious. You get gratitude. You get peace. You get love. You get kindness, compassion. You want to help others. You want to give to others because you already know that you already have. And then in this devil system, or rather in this reality, when you don't need something anymore, physically you don't need it anymore, you get it. We all know this to be true to a certain aspect. Think in your life to the times when you didn't really need something and it naturally came to you like a cat. But when you want to chase it, it just runs away from you because that's not the nature of reality. James said, you ask, but you do not get. But it's the very desire for these things that drive them away from you, because you're not dwelling in the I am, the aspect of you that already has. Instead, you're dwelling with the part of you that wants and desires and has nothing and does not know God, which is the ego and the flesh. And it cannot rationalize. Rationalization is not the road because the ego and the flesh cannot comprehend the I am, God, the divine. Two completely different natures, both needed and both serve a purpose. But if you dwell in that ego, in that flesh, you're in hell, forever chasing the things that you want when really it already belongs to God. You just need to ask of God. And so I hope that from this you can remember the I am in you And mind you, I don't mean find, I mean remember. It's not a finding, it's a remembrance. You came into this world naturally as the I am, but you came to start adopting false beliefs, constraints. You heard the system, you saw the system, you felt the system, you tasted the system, you smelt the system, and you believed the system to become real. And so it became real, but it's not the truth. And it's not about fighting that. It's about remembering. Avert your gaze, avert your attention from lack to abundance. And the abundance starts in here. And then this follows. But you have to start in here. You have to remember. And it isn't hard. I promise you, it's easy. Just sit down, close your eyes, and have the feeling of knowing, the emotion of knowing, the emotion of abundance, any emotion that is of a higher state. Feel that emotion in you, choose to feel it in that moment and dwell in that emotion. And then while you dwell, let the thoughts pass. And by letting the thoughts pass, you then wake up and you remember that you're not your thoughts, that you're not those things, and that you don't need to fight them, and that they're just like cars passing on the street, just going. And then you realize truly what you're dwelling in that emotion is the I am, the divine, that has all the things that the ego wants. Go in peace.